Hi, I'm Michelle Jorgensen with Mount Mahogany Steak Self-Reliance training video. Today we are talking about one of my very favorite things, gardening. And if there weren't snow on the ground outside, we'd be outside in my garden having this conversation. But there's snow on the ground, so we're going to talk about it in here. You know, I can't in a 10-minute video teach you about gardening. If you want to know more about that, come on over and let's talk. But right now, what I want to teach you about is how you can store things so that if an emergency occurred, you can garden. So that's what we're going to focus on in today's video, is what you need to be prepared for and what you need to start practicing now so that you'd be ready in any kind of an emergency. That's the first key, is you need to start today. A lot of people will say, oh, if an emergency comes, I have some seeds, I'll be great, I'll just throw them in the ground. Well, gardening's a little harder than that. I tell people it's not that hard. It really isn't. All you need is sun and good soil and some water and a seed will grow. But you might want to have practiced a little bit before your life depends on it. So that's some thinking. Maybe you just even put a little bit in a flower bed next to your house. Maybe you do just a little pot on your balcony that grows something. Just start somewhere, get the feel for growing something. Behind me, you can see this is what we feed our animals on a daily basis. This is sprouted barley. So we're growing year-round at our house, but not everybody does that. You can just grow in the summer, and that's okay. That's a good way to start. But gardening is a skill. It's something that you get better at the longer you do it. And I've made a lot of mistakes in my time in gardening, and I'm glad I have, because now I know more than I would have if I hadn't have made those mistakes. So practice a little bit. Okay, so what are the things that you should store and be prepared for gardening? The first thing that you want to do is if an emergency occurs. So let's just say we have an emergency, our food supply is shut down like we talked about last month with long-term food storage. Our food supply is shut down. We're living on beans and rice, that Scotch broth recipe I put. That's going to get real old real fast. So we would like some fresh foods to add nutrients to our diet and also to add variety to our diet. So you need some fast-growing seeds. People will say, oh, I'll plant a potato, I'll plant a tomato. Well, that's great, but you're looking at probably 6 to 7 months before you're going to get anything edible off that tomato once you've planted that seed. That's not really that useful in an emergency situation. So some of the things that are fast to grow you want to know about. So we're going to talk about that in a minute. So you want fast-growing seeds for an emergency. You need some kind of a sprouting seed, and we're going to talk about that, what a sprouting seed is and why do you need it. A place to grow it, so even if all you do is in an emergency you have a shovel so that you can turn over an 8x8 foot square of ground out in your lawn. You just need some place to grow the seed, and then you need some water. Those are the 4 things that you need to be able to grow. So let's talk. Emergency happens. The first thing you're going to do, you're not going to head out to your lawn. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to go and you're going to find some seeds to sprout. Now this may be simply some beans that you have in your long-term food storage. You want something to sprout. Sprouting is one of those things that people are always scared of, and it's so simple. It's almost ridiculous how simple it is, but everybody thinks it's so hard. It's really not hard at all. All you need is a bottle, some water, and some seeds. So you put the seeds in a bottle. First day of emergency, right? You're going to grab some seeds. Grab some kind of seeds, beans, whatever it is. If you have alfalfa, I love to store something like this. This is a sprouting mix. You put it in the bottle and you cover it with water and you let it sit overnight. That's step number 1. Step number 2, the next morning, you drain the water off of those seeds and you let it sit for about half a day. Step number 2, this is hard, I know. Step number 3 is you put water on it again and drain it off and let it sit for another half day. About every half day, you're going to put water in this, let water get all over your sprouts, and then drain it off. You're just watering your seeds. After about 3 or 4 days, you're going to have sprouts. So why do we want sprouts? Sprouts, if you sprout a bean, the nutrition in that bean is exponentially more than if you eat a dried bean. So if you're worried about being healthy during an emergency situation, sprouts are the #1 way to do it. I also have a commercial sprouter that's great. These sprouts, this is this mix right here. These sprouts, it gets about that size about day 4. So if all I'm living on is rice and beans, you can better believe that those are going to be very in demand. Everybody's going to want a little bit of this green. These sprouts, these are these seeds at about day 6. So that is a lot of good growth and good nutrition sitting right there in that sprouting tray. That's easy to do. Like I said, all you need is a bottle and some water. So don't be afraid of sprouting. So make sure you store some sprouting seeds. This is a commercial sprouting bottle that comes with the seeds and the bottle all in one, and I keep it in my refrigerator. So this is something I'll put on a link as well. Where do you get that? That's a super easy way to sprout because that's all you need is right there. So that's the first thing you do. First thing you do is you're going to start to soak some seeds. The second thing you're going to do is you're going to get your emergency seeds out. This is an emergency seed pack that I have. It's in a Mylar bag so that it'll store long term, and I keep it in the freezer. That may sound a little crazy, but you want to store seeds very dry and cool. Freezer's not necessary. You can just keep it in your cold storage, but just keep them cool. Even if you have seeds left over, these are my seeds from this year's garden. Even if you have seeds left over, just keep them cool. And they may not germinate 100%, but they're going to germinate well enough that you're going to get something out of them. This is a cabbage. Cabbage is great in a long-term or in a fast-growing in an emergency situation. So any of these seeds are going to be useful too. So make sure you have seeds of some kind, even if it's just a bag of emergency seeds. Some of the things you're going to want are fast seeds, fast-growing seeds. So if you've never grown a garden, you don't know, some of the fastest things to grow are radishes, lettuce, any greens. So lettuce, spinach, and believe me, you are going to want those things. Vitamin C deficiency is one of the first things that shows up in an emergency, and that is going to be found in those greens, in kale, and you are going to need it because vitamin deficiencies, it's one of those things that people had, if you remember the story about sailors getting scurvy. They were surviving on long-term storage foods. Remember last month, our long-term storage. That's the only foods they had as they were going across the ocean in boats. Well, they got vitamin deficiencies. They started getting pellagra and scurvy and rickets. These problems because they didn't have the vitamins they need. These foods, these green foods, provide the nutrients that you need to prevent having those nutritional deficiencies. So if all we have is rice and beans, we're going to get sick. So we need some of these things to supplement that. So that is what you need to grow. You need to have some fast-growing seeds. There's some rules about the seeds that you're going to store. So you will see there's two kinds of seed. There's a hybrid seed and there's an open pollinated or heirloom seed. You've probably heard that word before, heirloom seed. The hybrid seed is one that's been changed genetically in order to maximize a certain trait. So maybe they want longer green beans or redder tomatoes, whatever it is. They find one strain that has that trait that they like and they keep producing that one over and over again. Problem is those seeds are sterile. So if you grow hybrid seeds today, if that's all I have in here, if I have a hybrid seed in here, let's say this tomato is a hybrid, and I grow that tomato, I take that tomato and I take the seeds out of that tomato and I plant them, they won't grow. Either they won't grow at all or they grow some funky weird vegetable that I don't want to eat. So you don't want to store hybrid seeds. Those are the seeds that you're going to find most likely in the grocery store racks. You've seen them, all those racks with all those seeds in them. Don't buy those kind, because those are the kind that you cannot perpetuate. Because what I want to be able to do is when I grow beans, I then pick the ones that I didn't pick off the vine. When that vine dries out, I pull that bean pod off the vine, and now next year, that's my seed. When I go to plant beans next year, all I have to do is pull the bean seed out of my bean from last year, put this in the ground, and now I have more beans. So think of the bean potential in this bag. If every single one of those seeds grows a plant and every single one of those plants grows 100 beans, that's millions of beans in this plant, in this bag right here. If I had grown hybrid beans, I could not do that. So you have to store heirloom seeds in order to perpetuate it. This is one of the very best seed packets there is right there, because this is food and seeds. So anytime I cut this squash open, I will preserve all of the seeds from inside. I will dry them. I will put them in a bag, and now that is my seed for next year. So make sure that you're storing hybrid seeds. That's very, very important. Soil, let's talk a little bit about that because everybody always wonders. This is my compost bucket, and it's behind my kitchen sink. Everything that is not edible by humans goes in here. It is edible by humans, but it's the leftovers, it's the scraps, it's the peels, it's the things that we don't want to eat. It goes in here, and then this goes to feed my soil. It's just nature perpetuating itself. The skins from this, when I prepare this squash, will go in here, which will then feed the soil to grow my squash next year. That's how nature works. So when you are in any kind of emergency situation, you want to save everything. Everything we throw away today, you're going to keep. So you're going to keep every leaf, every bit of manure that any animal produces, every bit of hay or straw that somebody doesn't use. Every cast-off goes into the ground, and that's how it feeds your soil. So make sure that you're taking care of your soil, and your soil will take care of you. That's an important thing in any kind of emergency situation. Tools, that's the last thing I'll talk about. What do you need to store for tools? If these were the only things that I had, I would be able to grow a garden. So This is what's called a Japanese gardening knife, and it does not have to be this dirty. And these are some gardening gloves, and they don't have to be this dirty either, but these are just straight out of my gardening bin because these are the ones I use. If all I had was this, I could grow a garden. Literally. I will put a source for this Japanese gardening knife. It is a multi-purpose tool. It plants, it digs, it harvests, it cuts, it does all kinds of things. So you don't have to store a lot of fancy equipment to be able to grow a garden. You just have to store a couple of things and seeds and have a little bit of know-how. So that's gardening. Like I said, if you want to know more about details on gardening, come on over, let's talk, and you can see the garden. But for emergency storage situation, these are the things that you need to know and you need to be prepared to have. So by the end of this month, I want you to have gotten seeds, gotten a couple of easy gardening implements, maybe start composting, and throw something in the ground. April, this is April, so April you can start putting in cold-loving plants, which are all of your greens, lettuce, peas, radishes, turnips, the list can go on and on and on, broccoli, cabbage, cauliflower, all those things can go in the ground this month. So just put them in a flower bed somewhere and start to grow something. Let's practice this. Thank you so much. We'll see you next month.